The prophets, remember their primary role when they were called, and in human terms, they were not very successful, but they were called to actually confront the king. They wouldn't necessarily confront the people. Their idea was they had to confront the king because the king was the one to whom was entrusted the covenant with God. And so the prophets themselves were aimed at, and that's why they always had trouble with dealing with the kings and the leaders. So Jeremiah is angry at the weakening of this covenant because temple worship had been going astray due to the immorality of the time. And in Isaiah, Jesus has a vision of a time when foreigners would be included in the covenant. So what do we see here? Mark has Jesus in this, there's a tension between doing away with foreign influences and yet at the same time bringing foreigners together to be one. Okay? So that's pretty much the thrust of the idea of the money changing or the cleansing of the temple. But you have to keep in mind that Jesus was trying to go back to the way worship should be. Okay? So let's take a look now quickly at, where are we? Take a look at the two readings on the fig tree. Now, these are not necessarily the easy readings to understand. Okay? So let's read it and see if we can make some sense out of them. On the following day, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see whether perhaps he would find anything on it. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season of figs. He said to it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard it. Okay, we're jumping over to verse 20 now. The next morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. Then Peter remembered. Now, Peter is coming back to Jesus and saying, Peter remembered and said to him, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered." All right. Now, Jesus doesn't bring up immediately or directly the idea of the fig tree. What does he say to Peter? He says, Jesus answered them, "Have faith in God. Truly I tell you, if you say to this mountain, 'Be taken up and thrown into the sea,' and if you do not doubt in your heart, but believe that what you say will come to pass, it will be done for you. So I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. Whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses." All of a sudden, Peter looks at this fig tree, sees that it's withered, and Jesus says to him, "Have faith." Now, why would Jesus respond? Again, we deal with symbols. Okay? The fig tree had a couple of symbols. The fig tree was, by legend, the tree of the forbidden fruit. The forbidden fruit in Genesis was the fig tree. We surmise that because Adam and Eve had to sew together fig leaves for their first clothes. All right? So, in imagery speaking, all right, the fig tree was the forbidden fruit. And then at the other symbol is a fig tree that's in bloom is considered to be a sign of the end times. Okay. So, what's going on here? And immediately what we find Jesus doing in that first section is cursed the tree. Well, symbolically, that represents God cursing the ground, right? After the sin of Adam and Eve, he curses the ground, and out of the ground thistles and thorns would grow. So the imagery, the prophetic imagery, the scriptural imagery, again goes back to the garden. However, we go back to our favorite prophet, Isaiah, and Isaiah has something very interesting to say about this whole idea of the curse. All right? Here's what Isaiah says. Instead of the thorn shall come up the cypress, instead of the briar shall come up the myrtle, and it shall be to the Lord for a memorial, for an everlasting sign that shall not be cut off. Okay. What is Isaiah saying? Isaiah is saying, look, that fig tree is going to be restored. And that's what Jesus is saying to Peter. Peter, have faith that someday this fig tree will be restored. And what kind of faith is Jesus looking for? He's basically saying, if you have faith, you've heard the expression, if you have faith, you can move mountains. And that's what he's saying here. The strength of your faith and then your forgiveness leaves open to the end time when the fig tree, which is a sign of the end time, will be restored. So again, it has that idea. And the other thing, too, is with Mark, throughout his whole gospel, the parables of Mark, the miracles of Mark, or portraying Jesus' miracles, but for the most part, miracles of healing. At one point, he heals a man with a withered arm. So this imagery of being withered and Jesus restoring it has run through most of the miracles that we find in Mark.